I often get accused of, well, spending too much time on internet marketing or whatever, but the question that's raised again and again and again is, where can I find the time? Where can you find the time for your internet marketing? And the quick answer is, we've all got, it sounds really glib, but we've all got 24 hours in a day. We've all got exactly the same amount of time in the day. That goes from the poorest person in the world to the richest person, absolutely everyone. We're all on the same clock. It's how the planet works. So, you've got the time, because you've got exactly the same time as everyone else. First answer I always come out with is, stop watching the news. The news will happen whether you watch it or not, and with 24-hour news, it's happening all the time, but it's not really, in that most of the time the news doesn't affect you. There could be the occasional thing, if there's a hurricane warning or a storm coming that way or something like that, then yeah, maybe it'll affect you. But most of the time, it's someone you've never met, or a bunch of people you've never met, doing something or whatever, somewhere else in the world, and you can't really affect what's happening. And that's about it. So stop watching the news. That'll give you, or listening to news, or checking it on your phone, or logging onto a site or whatever else, that'll give you however long you'd spend, but probably 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes a day watching the news that you can get back and use for something else productive. Next point is something that I've been suggesting to people recently. Stop checking the weather. Almost everyone I know is checking the weather for 1, 2, 3 days ahead, and in reality the weather doesn't read the weather forecast, and the easiest way to do the weather is what I've been doing for a long time now. Look out the door or the window. If it's sunny and there's not a cloud in the sky, it's probably going to stay that way. If there's twitches of clouds or the wind's blowing or whatever, then you might need a coat. If there's snow on the ground, you'll need boots, whatever else. But stop checking the weather, because unless you want to just prove to yourself that the weather forecast is completely and utterly unrealistic, it's just a fairy tale, in which case print it out for the next 5 days and see how it changes. It goes full cycle almost. 5 days time it'll say, well, yeah, it's going to be sunny, then tomorrow it'll decide actually 4 days time which it'll be then, it could be rainy, and it makes it up as it goes along. So stop checking the weather, and that'll get you another 5-10 minutes a day very, very easily. And the third point is one that I find really makes me productive, and that's fill out a timesheet. A piece of paper works fine, or a spreadsheet works fine. I use a spreadsheet. I'll just show you the one I'm using. It's not filled out at the moment, but days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that's more than enough. Hours in a day, start at, could be 8 o'clock, could be 7, whatever, go up in half-hour increments, and then everything you've done in each of those half hours, honestly, type in. The only person you'd be lying to is yourself, and that's pointless, because deep down you'll know you've done something else. So literally, if you've been on that one checking emails, that's what you type in. If you've been doing something more productive, that's what you type in, watching the news. And it'll become very, very apparent, very, very fast, what you're spending your time on. Now obviously you might not spend the whole half hour doing that. So if it's a majority, if you've been checking your emails for 25 minutes out of the 30, that's what you were doing. If you were watching the news from 20 or 25 minutes out of the 30, that's what you're doing. If need be, you split the cell, or the whatever. So you do watching news oblique checking emails. Could be watching videos. It could be working. Could be creating your next product. Could be like this, shooting a video. Could be waiting for it to render in this particular instance, because that takes time, and I'm not as productive as I could be at the time that takes. But if I need to be, I'll change it. So that kind of spreadsheet or a piece of paper that does exactly the same, you only have to do it. What I've found is, although I've got 5 days there, typically I'll do it for a couple of days, maybe 3, and that gets me back on track, because you realise, why am I spending that kind of amount of time doing that when it's not productive? And that's all it's doing. It's just keeping you on track, keeping you productive, keeping you realising what you're spending your time on. So if it's 10 minutes queuing for a coffee because that particular coffee shop's slow, maybe it'll pay you to go 2 minutes further to do it, or maybe just have a glass of water instead. Be cheaper as well, and probably healthier, because caffeine isn't overly healthy, but we're digressing there. But very, very easy. Just that either on a spreadsheet, which I find the easiest because I can just save it, but if it's something else, print it out on a piece of paper, just sketch it out on a piece of paper, it doesn't matter, as long as you go back to it and don't leave it to the end of the day to fill in. And obviously I haven't filled this in today because I'm not doing it currently, but every time I need to get back on track, I'll do something like this and fill it in every half hour. Set an alarm on your phone to go off, something that's a trigger, because you probably can't remember what you were doing 6 or 7 hours ago in enough detail to say I was doing that for most of that half hour chunk. You might be able to, but you probably can't, and then that's when you start lying to yourself, and then that's when you don't actually end up doing what you're supposed to be doing or what you thought you were doing. So, very easy to do. And as I said, you don't have to do it for very long because it will become glaringly obvious what you're spending your time on. As long as you fill it in honestly, the timesheet, I find, far and away the best way of making myself more productive, because it just shouts out at you. If you wanted to, you could colour the cells, you could go, that one could be green, that could be red, whatever it happened to be, depending on whether it's good or bad. But generally speaking, you'll just find that, yeah, I was doing that most of that time, and then ask yourself that question: is that something you want to be spending your time on? If it is, fine. If it isn't, change it. So between those, stop watching the news. Trust me, if something big happens, you'll still hear about it. People will tell you, they'll say, haven't you seen that? And no, I'm not watching the news at the moment. Me personally, I read a magazine called The Week once a week, spend about 40 minutes on it, just gives me a catch up and an overview. If there's anything big happens in the meantime, someone will tell me, if I actually needed to know, and then I can take a view on that. I can then say, actually I'm going to spend 5 minutes researching that a bit more, or okay, I can't affect it. You know, something happened the other side of the world, a lot of people I haven't met, something happened to them. Yeah, okay, but that's it. Stop checking the weather. If need be, just take an umbrella with you as well. Whatever the weather's like in Britain, that seems to be a good plan. But stop checking the weather, because again, if you're checking it more than an hour ahead, it doesn't know. And then if you're doing it that fast, well, just look out the window or the door. But filling out that timesheet, and you'll find that the amount of time that creates, you're thinking, well, actually, I could be doing my internet marketing. I could have spent 15 minutes making a video, could have spent half an hour writing an article, could have spent 20 minutes writing another couple of pages of my Kindle book. Anything like that, and you'll find the time will leap out at you and it'll shout at you. It'll just say, hey, you could actually be doing that, and you could be on your way to making more money from the internet because you're actually doing something productive rather than not. So that's it, go for it. You've watched this video. If you need to follow up, there's some links below it. I'll be perfectly happy to, well, help you. But I start with that timesheet. Start by switching off the news, closing down that website with the news app or whatever it happens to be. Stop checking the weather and fill out that timesheet, because it will become, within a day or two, glaringly obvious where you're spending your time and where you could shift how you're spending your time, because that's all the richest people have done. They've not increased the number of hours in a day. They can't, not in our current understanding of laws of physics and whatever, but they've shifted what they're doing. And what you'll also, a bit of an aside but not totally, even seemingly the most productive people probably only spend 1 or 2 hours a day productively. The rest is tied up in meetings, answering memos, writing emails, or whatever. It's kind of weird, because even the ones that you're looking at, you're thinking, oh, they're super productive. They're probably only spending an hour or two at most. So if you can even get close to that, you'll be up there with them. So go on, have fun, play a game with yourself, and go for it.